So the guide opens with the line that compliance has moved from implementation to enforcement. How do you feel that contact centre leaders are experiencing that shift at the moment?
With anything like this, especially coming from who it's coming from, and using the term enforcement, I would say it's always trepidation. You go back through any of the big compliance changes and pushes, not just to contact centres, but information security. There's always that worry. Most regulations, there's always terms in there that are ambiguous, that people are seeking clarity on because they want to make sure that they are protected as a business. They have moved to personal liability now. That obviously always brings that. I would say enforcement was always going to come, and I think contact centres need to ask themselves why that is. And it's typically because the regulators aren't seeing the outcome they anticipated from the regulations they put in. So then they're moving up a notch. They're stepping up to the next level. You're seeing that with the increase in fines. And it's the right thing to do. Now, what that does and what contact centres should be asking, are we doing the right things? How do we show we're doing the right things, and are we doing enough is typically how people think. And I would say the best thing to do is if you can show that you have this working in practice, then you're finding problems, because nothing's ever perfect, where we have recognised this challenge, here's the remediation, here's the action to improve going forward, then that is what people are looking for. Whenever anything's a green bill of health and there's never an issue with what we're doing day to day, especially when people are involved, that's where the red flags start tricking. So I wouldn't be worried about finding problems, which most people usually are when regulations come in. Oh my God, we found this problem and that means we're not compliant. That's not true. What is true is you've got a process in place to identify and fix the problem. That's compliance. So look at it through that lens. Don't be afraid of finding challenges in your business. That's the point, as long as you fix them on the other side of it.
Consumer Duty has been live now since 2023, but the FCA are now starting to do things a little bit differently. Like, what are they doing differently, and why does that matter?
Well, we said it'd go into enforcement. I think it was always going to happen. It matters because we've been given time to actually look at what consumer duty means for us as a business, how we're reacting to that, are we doing enough? The adoption of technology is now, I'd say, becoming an expectation. Is it being treated at the right level? So the FCA have called out that they've looked at 180 board reports, and what FCA and regulators are looking for is, have we got buy-in at the right levels of the business? Is this being discussed at director level, or is it a tick box exercise? I have to be compliant. Have we put the bare minimum in place that isn't working and isn't being challenged at the right level? And do I have buy-in at CEO, director, and board level? And the answer they've come to is no. So enforcement is coming, and what they're looking for is not perfect. And again, I think that's something that's misrepresented in most regulations. They're looking at live processes. Does the process work? Are we finding challenges? Are we improving? And we put the consumer first. And if we're saying we are, how do we prove that? And that's usually the hard part. And it's not remedial. It's not 1% and 2% it's not enough anymore. We need to be showing that we're doing 100% coverage, and we've got all the customers we interact with at the forefront, and we're dealing with them all equally and transparently. So that is now the expectation. We've had 2 years to learn, adopt, and implement, and I think now what's happening is it's now coming to proof. So that is the change. It was always going to come, and I think we're here now. And I would say, one thing to be wary of, whenever these regulations come in and we move to enforcement, there is normally 1 or 2 cases where they want to make a bit of a case, and they want the headline to say, we found this problem, we handed out this fine, or we've done this to this company. And I would say typically we'll start seeing that anyone that's high up on that list where they're getting lots of complaints, it's giving the FCA some more teeth, and I think they will actually use it.
If a contact centre is sampling 2% of their calls and calling that QA coverage, where do you think that actually stands?
Sampling 2% of calls now, I think we need to call out very clearly, it's just going to be seen as you're missing 98%. So it's not that we're doing coverage, it's you might as well not be. We know you can do 2% and miss the problems. And again, with the movement in technology, and especially the cost of the technology has come down significantly over the last 5, 10 years. I don't think it will be seen as any safe harbour anymore at all. Again, I would see it as the response will be you're missing 98%. How are you covering your clients and ensuring that you're getting consistency at 2%? And I think we can all admit, if we're being honest, you're not. So technology now is there. 100% coverage is very achievable, and from that 100% coverage also is escalation. You can refine exactly what you're looking for. We can identify, and even to the point with real time, you can remediate during the conversation. So I think people need to be very clear that we're aware of what's out there, what is capable, and it will be seen as you're willing to sacrifice that investment for technology to make you compliant over and above the flip side, which that's a choice ultimately as a business you're making, and that in itself sends a message of how seriously you're treating the new regulations.
So the maximum PECR fine has gone up 35 times to 17.5 million. What surprised me was the personal liability fines that are on offer at the moment. Can you give me some indication of why you think that might be in place?
The only reason I've ever seen to increase the fines and make personal liability is they've not got the outcome they want. So complaints are still on the rise, they're not decreasing. The way to bring that to the forefront is, again, we've used the term before, enforcement. I think there's plenty of businesses out there that this would have been a part of their plan and budgeting. If the fine was less than the benefit to the business, then they would have offset that as part of their business plan. I think this solves that problem. The fines now can nearly be company ending, and they're also including 4% of global for global companies to bring them into scope. And I think the single biggest change will be that personal fine, where they've already referenced that this isn't being discussed at board level. I think by making it personal and direct responsibility, that solves that challenge.
So a lot of contact centres are now using AI for things like call scoring, routing and collections prioritisation. How does the regulatory picture change when it comes to things like the DUAA Act?
I think it's a good thing. It's worst kept secret in technology and business that data is processed in some way, so it's great that regulation's catching up with AI and automation. And I think it recognises that it can actually be in the consumer's interest. Real-time analytics is a great example of, instead of being reactionary to a problem, it can be dealt with real-time on the call, which is great for the consumers. One thing everyone needs to bear in mind is that there is going to be a reliance on what the data flows are, what the consumer and legitimate interest, which again is a bit of a vague term, that you have in using that data and how you're using it day to day. I think data processing now is going to come at the forefront of the use of data. How, why, what, where, which vendors as well, and where the data's stored. I think historically, and we've already seen companies blaming AI and agentic AI specifically for poor processes. Well, that's part of the process. So I don't think that will be a reason or allowed. And we need to include where the human is in the loop, who's checking these processes, how they work, and also where humans are available to enter the loop. So you're able to drop out of automation processes so that a human can be involved rather than businesses using it as an excuse for operational efficiencies. We still need to put the consumer first and make sure the consumer is having the best experience, and also that they're being treated fairly consistently as required.
There's no standalone UK AI Act yet. Does that mean UK operations are off the hook?
The simple answer is no. I think that'd be a bit naive. We've got enough and plenty of regulations that are already starting to cover the usage of AI, and the stance that's been taken is very simple. AI putting the consumer at risk isn't an answer. It's going to be treated AI the same as if a person does it, and that's where the responsibility of the businesses are really going to come in. I do foresee AI regulation coming in at some point. I think you're starting to see now around the world it's being tested in countries. I think what we'll start seeing is that adoption, seeing what works, and then the UK will typically follow suit. But we're definitely not off the hook. I think treat AI like a person. There's even areas of businesses that are starting to include them on their org chart, so they are not forgotten about, especially when people leave the business with the knowledge. They're at the forefront, and they need to be achieving the purpose and the outcome the same as a person does, and that's probably the best way of viewing it.
So the right to speak to a human when you are engaging with AI comes up multiple times throughout the guide. Is that regulation today, or is it just good customer experience?
it's not restricted regulation today. I can see it coming in. It is good customer experience. I think most people have been stuck in an AI death spiral. I think it's still, technology should be used for the right purpose, for the right outcome. So do I see it coming? Yes, I think what's going to happen is, I think technology is going to be given so long to solve the consumer's issue, and if it isn't, then they need to be given an opt-out to a human. The same way we're already seeing now that you have to call out explicitly quite frequently that you're dealing with AI and automation and not trying to convince them they're a person. Again, it's putting the customer first. You're still dealing with a human, and it's better customer experience overall if you allow the consumer to choose the best option for them to achieve the best outcome.
So if a compliance manager picked up the guide today, what's the one takeaway that you'd be advising them?
If there's a key message I'd like people to take away from this and downloading the guide, is that this drives business outcomes, positive business outcomes. It puts the consumer first. They are the heart of the regulation, and that this is now going to be enforceable. So technology is there, it's an enabler. It's easier to do than ever, actually. Don't be afraid of it. Let's focus on driving positive and consumer outcomes.